Hello, Richard. We are so sorry that we are 29 minutes late, but we've had a few technical issues. I thought last week just went too swimmingly well with our new tech, and this week it really proved a little bit more challenging. But anyway, we're here now, so it doesn't matter. And but I'm really excited to have Richard here today. And he is all things knowledgeable about corporate guests for serviced accommodation. And he's created so much positivity in the community around this avatar. So Richard, just a very quick, if people don't know you, please give us a quick overview of who you are.
Okay, thank you. Well, after the experience this morning, I've got my blood pressure tablets to hand in case I take any more. Yeah, hi, thanks Emma for that kind introduction. In a nutshell, really, service department sector. I've been in it for 27 years. I came out of the corporate hotel sector, and largely I've been active in the agency world within the corporate marketplace. About 10 years ago, I set up my own consult, and that's been active ever since, and runs parallel with the SABA networking event, which I run for the corporate marketplace. I suppose I should add there, and maybe we talk about that a little bit later, I'll be looking to introduce a networking event specific to the contractor marketplace as well. I've been running some kind of, I posted on social media the other day, and it seemed to be quite a popular idea. It might be a different animal dependent on the requirements in that marketplace. I'm not going to assume that people want the same thing or the same type of engagement. So it'll be a little bit of a trial run first to see how it all goes. But yeah.
Fantastic. So let's like go right back to the beginning and really start, because so as we're aware, there are different people that will come and stay in your serviced accommodation, and it's really key, certainly for me, and I know you're the same, Richard, that you create a product that answers the need of that avatar. So generally people look at leisure guests, contractors we've already touched on, and then obviously what we're going to talk about today is the corporates. And although there can be some crossovers, as we know, inherently they are each quite a unique beast. And even in the sort of hospitality, as in leisure guests, I mean, that's huge, because you could literally have a one-bed studio in a town centre, which attracts youngsters who want to come and go shopping or have a night out, right the way through to huge mansions that people hire for big events and things like that. But what we're concentrating on today is corporates. So tell us, Richard, what is a corporate client? So if somebody doesn't know and is a bit confused, what would you consider to be a corporate client?
Yeah, they generally will be in the workplace, office workers, really, as opposed to contractors, which might be tradespeople or construction workers. So that's the difference, largely. Yeah.
And how would you say it differs then between finding contractors, for instance, and finding corporates? Is it just a question of going to the head office? Do you think there's different marketing? Where do you see that?
Yeah, the requirements of corporates and contractors are often very different. The way in which those clients book is also very different, and the way in which you serviced accommodation operator should deal with the bookings and the clients are very different. So where do I start with all of that, really? Because they are so different, so and yet so often confused. So if I may, just kind of rewind right to the beginning of somebody's life in the serviced accommodation, short-term rentals market, a sector. And I'll be referring to a sector which is the overall kind of fragmented melee of people offering accommodation where you've got a bed and cooking facilities. So I'll be referring to that as the sector, and then within which there are markets according to the type of client that you target. And I wind it right back and say anybody that's moving into this sector should first of all consider, as you've just kind of stated, alluded to, if not stated clearly, you need to know which clients you're targeting. There's no point going, woo, here's a bed, there's a cooker, who's going to, who wants it? You've got to figure out yourself initially the marketplace and whether there is a demand for the supply of that type of accommodation. Once you've assessed that, then you will know whether you're targeting largely the corporates, the contractor, leisure, or sometimes there's accommodation where you're just targeting insurance or refurbs, that kind of thing. But it always has been very fragmented. It always will be, because everything's fragmented, because everything changes. The minute that I could get very poetic and say I used to do some French poetry, and there was I studied French literature, and I'll always remember that kind of statement. I don't know who it was. I think it was Victor Hugo that said something along the lines of, "Once an emotion's been expressed, it's dead forever," kind of thing. But different elements within this. I don't know why I said that, to be honest. I'm trying to figure out where my brain connected with that one. But
it's okay.
Things are constantly changing. And this is really what I meant was, once you think you've defined that market, it's changed before your ink's even dried up on the paper. So never ever think that there is something that's written in stone forever. And therefore, all operators need to constantly be monitoring the changes in their marketplace, and not just their geographical marketplace, but the nature of the beast. And we've seen that with COVID. Things have changed a lot with COVID. All of a sudden, the corporates want working spaces in the apartments. They'll often be bringing their dogs along just so that they don't go crazy. Those kind of things. So it's changed pretty dramatically over COVID, but it is constantly changing. But yeah, fragmented, and the way in which they book. I think that the contractor marketplace is also in the process of changing. It will change. I kind of see right now in the contractor marketplace where the corporates were, I don't know, let's say 10 years ago. Every day that 10 years becomes 9 years. Say it's again, things move so fast. But I say this in terms of, in the old days, the corporate marketplace was, for want of a better expression, well, let's call it unregulated. I mean, it is all still unregulated, and that's another thing really with regulation and the two bits of legislation that are in discussion right now. But it will become more regulated, I think, in the contractor marketplace, and that's where my thoughts are with the networking, because I think that agents will become more important in the contractor market. I know that there has always been this. Who doesn't like direct bookings? We run a couple of units ourselves, and direct booking's great, but the agents serve a very important role. And sometimes, certainly in if we return to the corporate market, you can't get around them. Full stop.
Can I just clarify for anyone who's kind of new to this and doesn't necessarily know? So I would gather when Richard is talking about agents, he's talking about what we would call is the sort of corporate online travel agents. So that would be, something like Situ, Silverdoor, where the big companies who don't particularly want to come and deal with individual, providers, they literally come in and they act as the kind of agent to find those bookings. So they might go to lots of different places, but it helps them, you know, if they're looking for, let's say, 10 units, 10 two-bed units, for instance, in one area, then the agent will find all of them, but they will be the one contact for the company. So that's again what you're talking about there, Richard.
Absolutely, yeah. Whenever I refer to an agent, I'm talking a booking agent, not an estate agent or a lettings agent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to clarify as well. So you know, we talked about knowing that there's a demand. And I know that I'm just finalising my book, aren't I, about finding your gold mine area for serviced accommodation. And obviously, you know, you're looking at different things. So what do you see as being an area that would have demand for corporates?
A geographical area, you mean? You're talking about, yeah. Cities often, but it's kind of a little bit, usually cities, you can say by and large, but it's a blur there, because you might say, let's take East Anglia. You might think of that immediately as a rural area. And yet there are, you know, the pharmaceuticals, the agricultural kind of companies out there. So they are corporate around the Cambridge area, Peterborough and the like. And you might think that Liverpool might be corporate, but actually not so much. It's kind of leisure and contractor. I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not saying absolutely 100% everything there, but there are no geographical areas really where corporates wouldn't be outside of a reasonable sized town, you know, with as long as up to a point where it's a reasonable sized town. So yeah, wherever there are business parks, there are corporates, and wherever there are city centre offices, there are corporates.
But you're potentially looking at sort of bigger, aren't you? I suppose so. You're looking at more like head offices. You know, so like Jaguar Land Rover, for instance, as you mentioned, some big sort of pharmaceutical companies, big agricultural companies, all of those kind of things, probably potentially, again, I don't know, around sort of free ports, if there any kind of like banking movements as well. So there's been quite a shift, hasn't there, of banks moving to new cities. That's got some, you know, big implications for potential corporate clients as well. And I suppose it's really understanding, as you've spoken about, is that it really is a different place, a different model. So I know some people that are opening a load of properties in. Oh, is this where you need to jump off? You carry on.
Bear with me.
I'll just keep explaining that. So you this person's opening up a whole host of new apartments in a block, and one, it's going to be a challenge because you're suddenly adding a whole host of new properties into the market. So you're kind of flooding the market a little bit. And then most people are doing contractors. And again, that is kind of quite saturated in that area. So I know this person that I was talking to, I kind of recommended to have a look at the corporate side of things. But at that stage, then if you're wanting somebody to manage your property, you need to be going to somebody who is solely focused at corporates, because a contractor who gets the odd corporate, and that's how I would put myself into that position. So I've had corporate clients come and stay, and they've been very lucrative, but it wasn't my mainstay. It was just that there was nobody else in that city that they could go to. So they came to me, but obviously all the needs that they had, I met them. You know, so when they asked for, you know, more cooking equipment, more this, more that, of course, I'm literally immediately on it. And we provided them. They required quite a lot of sort of extra stuff. It didn't take time or effort, but everything we did, we obviously answered their needs. So it is very different. So, you know, as far as kind of marketing to those, I mean, obviously, let's touch on SABA, because that's a huge thing, and that would certainly be one. So let's touch on your SABA network and just explain what that is.
Okay, and then if I may just briefly mentioned part and parcel with that course, as we discussed earlier, because then we have that. Then we've talked about both, and then we can
absolutely
talk about other things. But yeah, SABA networking's been going 14 years. I was how it started was I was an agency at the time. So I left a company called the Apartment Service after 10 years there. They've recently been bought by Silverdor. I was marketing manager there. Left to start my own agency, which was then called Accom Hotel. A service department operator decided not to pay me some commission, quite a lot of commission, in fact, and cut a long story short, I didn't want that kind of thing to happen again. So I got in touch with a number of agents, booking agents, and initially down the pub and discussing life and what have you, as you do. And we started the SABA networking. The principle being, if you can trust people in the room, it creates business, and there was a good deal of distrust around at the time because everybody was new in the sector and what have you. A lot of people knew it was a very fast moving environment, and we needed to kind of like slow it down a bit and go, right, well, okay, now these are all the people that you can trust. So it's developed from there, 14 years or so, and it runs on a monthly basis. Between 60, 70 and 100 people attend every month, the last Thursday of every month. The booking agents and the service accommodation providers, the largest brands in the sector, the likes of, let's say, well, Cheval will be the next one. At Cheval, they're one of the first brands in the UK, actually. It's a 5-star brand. Stay City, Marlin, Fraser's. So all of those people will attend. Silverdor City and the agents all attend. A business is generated. So that's in order to attend, you need to go through a 3-hour course. If you're new to the sector or haven't been to a SABA event, you need to do the 3-hour course. Costs £300. It's not a roadblock set up. It's more, if you like, a desk that's set up to help you to, if you're new, to benefit from the event, because there's no point going not understanding what's going on and walking away and disenchanted that you didn't understand a word anyone was talking about and nothing was achieved. So you need to understand what's going on at the event in order to benefit. Conversely, so once you become a regular, you don't want somebody else coming along to the event without the knowledge of the event and wasting your own time. So it's all to do with that. It's all to do with for a very, very low charge, you can attend that event. But most importantly, with the course, it will give you a lot of information regarding the corporate marketplace, what it is, how it functions, and how you can move into it, or how you can optimize your efforts in that marketplace. So that's all about that SABA and the course.
Absolutely, and I think what's amazing with the SABA, I mean, I've attended it a lot online, and I know during COVID it was a lifeline for a lot of people when it was open and shut and open and shut, and then just in general, it's quite often we only get to speak to the person dealing with a booking when you're talking to Silverdor and Situ and all of those kind of ones. And what you get in there is a really great kind of relationship building, which you can't always get on those quick phone calls, especially if they're really on a timeline to get back to the client. They don't want to sit and just have a general chit chat. They want to, just find out, do you have availability? What have you got? Is it decent? And, and take it from there. So I think putting, providers and agents into the same room in a much more relaxed setting, and having that opportunity to find out more as well, isn't it? I mean, inherently, sometimes it's kind of like, I think what I've got is what they need. But actually, when you're chatting to them, it's kind of like, well, actually, in your area, that is great, but we are looking for sort of other things as well. So yeah, I find it, really great. And then on top of that, obviously, it's generating business. So who are people going to find their business? So I always say this to people: if there's, if you've got somebody who's got 10 bookings, and they know you, and 15 other people, you're probably going to be first on their list to at least give them a call and get that feedback. So I think, yeah, it's incredibly valuable. And obviously the fact that the agents continue to attend the event must mean that it works really well from their perspective, because obviously, as a provider, we're kind of there wanting to do everything. So what do you find from the agents? What do they like about the event?
Exactly what you've just described, really. So they will either be getting to know the new agents, the new operators, service accommodation providers / operators. So they like that a great deal. They might have something that they need to talk about with a particular established operator. And they can do that at SABA. It's often a case that it's sort of when people need to chat through something rather than arranging a meeting, they'll just simply say, right, well, we'll talk about it when we meet at SABA, that kind of thing. It's just a convenient kind of meeting place at the end of the month. It's also, so coming back. By the way, I just saw in the chat there, Scott says hi,
yeah,
Scott.
I'm just messaging Scott saying, hi, Scott. Scott, we're of Pillow Partners, if anyone doesn't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when they're not on the beach. So those social media posts, but yeah, no, very envious of that one. So yeah, but Talking Pillow Partners as well, and a very impressive brand, I think. So yeah, just a shout out to them. But talking about going back to what you were talking about, so relationships and community, it's all about that, really. We're a small enough community, it's a small enough sector, it's not like the hotel sector, from which we must always continue to learn, in my opinion, and they must always continue to learn from from retail. But we're small enough that we have a community. Learn to trust the people that you can trust, learn who you can trust. And there is a community at SABA, and that's, I think, what the agents like as well, booking agents. Coming back though to the, what we're offering really in terms of to those corporates and what's important. Is to differentiate. Actually, one thing I did want to mention, and one thing which I think will be good for about your book, Emma, is that I often say to people, because you say about learning here, there, and everywhere, because you mentioned about learning at SABA, but I would beseech anybody looking either live or on the recording, to consider getting the information from one source, because it's like, I always liken it to the A to Z of London, the old times, and there's no point getting various formats and editions of the A to Z of London, all of which have different pages. You think you've got the entire story, but you don't have the entire story. If one page doesn't match the other, you're not going to get to where you want to go fast enough, or even get there. So get a whole picture of the sector, and I would say it's very, very a lot more time consuming and potentially very, very dangerous to your business if you try to apply the principle of picking up bits and bobs all over the place. So I'm not a massive fan of that, and I think that your book will help a lot of people in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you there. I think it's so key, and people are frightened, aren't they, of the American word niche, or niche, as we say. They're just terrified to niche down. But inherently, it's so incredibly important that you are known to provide a service for certain people. Now, will others utilize it? You know, if they see what you offer and it's fine, and they so like, you happen to be a hospitality person, leisure guest, well, fine, that's okay. But that is less likely to happen, and especially, I believe, in the corporate side, is you're talking so directly with head offices and different types of people and what they want. You've really got to understand what it is that they want and need, and answer those needs. Whereas if you're being so fluid across the entire market, you're kind of nothing to nobody, if you know what I mean. So you want to be everything to somebody. If you can be everything to a small sector, then you're going to answer that. And I think that's really key. And also, especially in the market at the moment, where there's massive oversaturation, I'm sure Scott will agree, in certain areas, that if you can really pick a sector that isn't oversaturated, then obviously that's going to be really fantastic, and you're going to stick out a mile, and people are going to want that, and they're going to really appreciate that you've gone out and really found out exactly what is needed. And again, you're so right, Richard. That's what my book is all about. It is all about doing your due diligence first and finding what is needed in that area, or what is what are the needs of that area. It's just so key. People just open up service accommodation, go, oh, there's a city, I'll open it up, and then it's like, oh, I don't have any bookings. They check on booking.com and there's 150 empty properties. I mean, and then they blame the management company. I'm like, well, what are the management companies supposed to do? If 50 new properties have opened in the last 3 months, what's anyone supposed to do? So yeah, I think it's absolutely so key to look at that. So what do you see as the real sort of needs of these kind of corporates then?
Yeah, I'll come on to that one. I just want to mention the 3 words in a way, really: saturation, niche, and differentiation. I do understand, the principle of saturation and what have you. I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure I respect the principle. I always think that a saturated market, as long as you can differentiate, and you mentioned there with the niche, as long as you can establish a niche and therefore differentiate your own brand, you've, in one fell swoop, you've got rid of a lot of your competition, because you are different. And it comes back to what you just asked there about what's on offer, kind of thing. But if you can develop your niche and always have a mind to differentiate your product from another, there's no point going head to head with big brands, trying to copy what the big brands are doing. They've got sales managers on the road. They will just simply blow you out of the water before you've even started. You have to be different. And I mean, that's probably the principle of Airbnb and how that started to establish a USP, a unique selling point in a way. They didn't sort of like, in the old days, Hilton had an advert, "Take me to the Hilton." It was like the 70s or the 80s. I don't know. I'm too old. I can't remember. But the kind of the moral of the story was, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you'll get one thing from Hilton, and it's the same wherever you are. Airbnb came along and said, I don't care if you're in the same town or not, same street, you'll get different things. And they almost and so they are 2 very, very opposite principles, approaches. And Airbnb have made a massive kind of positive out of something they couldn't avoid, which was a real fragmented offerings. But if you take that differentiation, say this is how we are different, and 10, 15 years ago, let's say, a lot of people were picking that Airbnb kind of thing, getting retro-y style furnishings perhaps, and it went the other way. The bigger operators and even the hotel chains started then putting retro-y kind of furniture into their rooms. Some furniture providers, I forgot the name of them now, one of them, but they will furnish a block of apartments or a hotel with different furnishings in each room. But that's the niche, and I would advise anybody to go for niche. Don't go for faux leisure sofas and magnolia walls. So be different is what I would say, and be proud about your difference, and and just stick to it. What the corporates want, or what anyone wants really, what we all want, is obviously comfortable, safe accommodation, and that's where accreditation comes into it all these days, and service, because we all want to feel that we're a valued guest, a respected guest, if that's at all important, certainly valued, and service is second to none. You can even get away with some kind of things that aren't up to scratch with your with the product that you offer, if you offer a good service and establish a relationship. That's why key boxes I'm not a massive fan of, if you can avoid them. Reception desks obviously would be ideal. Meet and greet otherwise is second best, I think. Key boxes, for me, but I'm a boomer, is a very alienating kind of experience. You pick up the key and that's it. There's your key, bud, get on with it. But if you do have a key box, I think it's very important to then establish a connection, a communication, and a connection with the guests, because it can often avoid in the future the complaints, because once you've established that connection and they feel valued and there is a communication going there, they will turn a blind eye, not bother to some things that might not have been up to scratch. Whereas if you don't, then people might get a little bit annoyed because they don't really know you as a person. So just offering a service and offering safe. Well, I noticed you yourself, Emma, are accredited quality in tourism, or what's it now? Quality International Accreditation, I think it is now, QIA. And ISAP is another one, ISAAP. So those are the two kind of accreditation bodies, I think. But to be accredited is also very important. That's also key, actually. Key differentiation, especially in the corporate marketplace, is to be accredited. Now, I don't know. I can go into that right now if you want, Emma, or if
go for it.
Yeah, okay. Basically, and this is fundamental to the corporate marketplace. And it's that whole duty of care that you mentioned earlier, Emma, where there is almost a chain of reporting, a chain of responsibility, where people along the line will expect the other person to have done their job. So you've got the client, the guest that's coming along. They will go to, let's say, HR, or they'll go to any given department in a company, and say, and tell them what kind of accommodation they need, whether it's for business travel or relocating, whatever. That department within a company will then contact an agency, depending upon what the type of business is happening. The department will trust those agencies to have done their job in checking the accommodation, and whether that's up to scratch and what have you. So if you are accredited, you're a known beast to the agents, to the departments within the corporations, and everything. So everything will be a lot easier for you, a lot better, and ultimately probably going along the lines of will be required in the corporate marketplace in order to continue to receive business. Obviously, there's going to be constantly new operators coming on board, but they will be accredited an awful lot faster than they have been in the past, because it will be so much more vital. And I see that process moving into the contractor marketplace as well, because as the market matures, people want to be reassured that the accommodation is fine. You don't want in one social media. I saw a social media post yesterday. Somebody had put up these little tents in their lounge, and they were charging for the tents in their lounge. And corporates, of course, won't be doing that. Contractors, Who's going to be doing that? Well, students maybe, but even the student marketplace is moving into the overseas student market is getting very, very close to the corporate marketplace. And there are booking agencies now just for overseas students who are paying as much as corporates. But yeah, it's respecting the guest, not putting up a tent and saying, there you go, bud, there you can sleep in that. And, it's not good. It won't be good anymore. I think that the contractor marketplace will move very, very, will move a lot closer to the corporate marketplace in terms of responsibility, each person's responsibility and duty of care to the next line, the next process in the line. So accreditation, I would really advise people to consider QIA or ISAP. There are other accreditation programs out there, so anybody that can think of any and wants to care to put them in the chat, then I think that would be a good idea. Thank you, by the way. I've just seen that you've posted the course there, Emma. Thank you for that, the corporate marketplace course. And yeah, please do join us, anybody. But yeah, it's all about doing the right thing. And I suppose that's almost where you start with your brand. By the way, we're talking brands and brand names. I would advise anybody out there who's only just considering brands not to include the name lettings or properties in their brand name. Properties, lettings, what's the other big ones? But, I would say when you're presenting your services to the marketplace, you're a hospitality provider. You're not a property person. You're a hospitality person, and they're not interested in what you do behind the scenes to get your properties. We don't know. We don't care when we stay at a Hilton if you can afford it. I'm just trying to at my dodgy hotel that we're not that we're not interested in where the property comes from or all of that. We're interested in what they provide for us as a service and comfort. So you're not a property company, you're a hospitality company, is what I would say.
Absolutely. And Darren's put interesting things. He said, yeah, he really agrees with the, personal connection. And he's talking about, what you talked about is not so much liking the key boxes and things like that. But I do feel a bit like Darren has spoken about that you can still create a relationship without necessarily seeing them. But I think knowing you, Darren, mostly your clients and certainly mine are more contractors. So actually they're not so bothered about you meeting them. In fact, it would often be a put off for them, but it doesn't mean that your clients can't feel very loved through the whole process. So for me, with my corporate guests, they pretty much don't want to meet me. I likewise don't really want to meet them necessarily. But the whole processes and the implementations that you put in place make them feel constantly like they're valued. So, there's lots of, and again, not overwhelming them, but asking questions at pertinent times. Is the service that you're getting, blah, 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 you're happy with it? And if they state that they're not happy with it, then immediately getting onto it. But I think on a corporate level, then that's totally different. If you've got somebody who's paying a lot of money and coming and staying in your property for 3 months, 6 months, or however long it is, that's a totally different kettle of fish. And I would always be saying, I presume that, you'd like me to come and meet and greet them. And if that's a yes, then I'd definitely be meeting and greeting them, asking them what they need, anything that's not there. And just that sort of general support of somebody who's moving into that accommodation. So I suppose, yes, it really depends again on your niche, on your avatar, on the actual guest that's moving in, as to what you provide to them and what you understand. And again, even in leisure, I've moved to gone and taken hired something for a weekend. It's a really big property, and somebody comes and shows you around, and you're really exhausted. It's like, oh, we can have a walk round. We've already seen the video. Just leave us alone. So it's really reading the scenario and understanding exactly what people want to ensure that you can help them along the way. So yeah, I think each different market is very different, and I don't believe that you have to worry necessarily. Certainly in the contractor market, needing to meet and greet. But in something like a corporate, you want to be doing whatever they want you to do. You want to be answering their needs basically.
I totally agree. You know, and it comes back to what we're talking about almost at the beginning, I think, really, of just keeping your ears to the ground and seeing what is required. And that will be that shifting thing as well, where if you then have, a number of operators moving into your area, which are offering meet and greet, and they might be doing that again for that whole thing of differentiating, then you might need to do it if it's viewed as of benefit. I take your point there, Emma, that sometimes the guests don't want to see us, and we are experiencing that increasingly. You might take a view that I don't care if you want to see me or not. I'm going to be telling you that if your kid opens that cupboard, they'll be drinking Domestos. So what I'm saying there is to protect yourself legally, obviously, with what we offer, the Domestos is in the higher cupboards. But what I mean is, you need to protect yourself from any legal kind of problems. Just to show people how the different appliances work, Yeah, won't go into any more detail than that, really.
Absolutely. I think with all of these things, you can share it. I mean, I don't provide any cleaning equipment in ours for varying reasons. But also, I think you can nowadays provide through online guest books. Very simply, if somebody is interested and they're a bit confused how to use a toaster or a microwave or the washing machine, you can now get incredible YouTube videos which pinpoints the exact make and model and type of that washing machine, and you get just a short 5-minute video that you can download into your guest book. And so if they have any problems, they can just flick on that and then they have all the answers there. And actually, when you've got somebody move, and I'd rather be pushed towards that and be able to sit down for 2 minutes once I've arrived, then that's fine. And again, things like remote keys, so people can arrive and let themselves in themselves, or you can remotely let them in. I think that's also something that's been really key for us. Certainly in our hotel, we have people that arrive at the front door and sometimes they're a bit flustered, and even though they know how to get in, they can all be a bit, I like to just not go, have you not got your key code? Or can you not do, you just don't do that. You just say, don't worry, I'll just let you in, get into your room, sit down, make yourself a cup of tea or pour yourself a wine, whatever it is, whatever time of the day. And then I'll give you a call back and we'll just sort out what that code is. And that's so much better, isn't it? Than kind of like in hospitality, the guest is always right. As painful as it can be, you may need to ask that guest to leave because their right is not your right. Well, that's totally different. But on these scenarios, I think it's kind of, really understanding and having empathy for your avatar and what they are, but also not being walked over. I mean, I'm sure you're the same, Richard. I did actually have a corporate guest once that was, very out of place. And I had to go back to the agent and say, this is what's happening. And in fact, that person was kind of a bit berated by their corporate entity that they were employed by, because we still have to maintain standards. Just because they're your guest doesn't mean they should be rude and, especially to your staff. And for me, my staff are my absolute number one priority, and I won't have anyone being rude to them. Of course, the odd occasion things can go wrong and you do everything to rectify that. But we're not here. People should not be rude to anyone else. You should have things in place for that. So I think that's it's about doing the right thing for the right person at the right time. And it may be that you have to just be a bit sort of careful and wary with that.
I agree. That's right. There needs to be mutual respect, doesn't there? We do try and provide a service, and we'll go beyond, the call of duty. But there's a line that you draw, definitely.
Exactly. And I think when you very first start out, I wish somebody had been a bit more honest with me, because I was certainly walked over, I think, for the first year. And then once I was kind of more established and I was a bit more confident, I was able to, you know, be quite direct. Some of my contractors, I would really berate them, and you know, it's not acceptable for you to behave like this, and you certainly don't speak to my staff like this. And I've had letters of apology written to me because, you know, when you're dealing with head office and their team are being inappropriate, that's a representation of that company, and of course that company doesn't want that as well. So yeah.
No, it's true. I mean, these things have changed over the generations, I think. And I don't know, sometimes when you get a call center where there's been a really bad service, and unfortunately I can't disassociate it from me when I'm talking about it, because it's clearly me that's making this phone call. But when they say, you know, if you say something like that again, so I'm going to hang up or something, you know, I'm thinking, give me a break. And coming from that particular kind of situation, I would always say, listen to the emotion, because although it might be a bit over the top to be complaining in a certain fashion about a certain thing, don't focus on that certain thing necessarily, because it's the emotion that you need to listen to. And once you engage with that person's emotion, they'll calm right down, I think. And I think that is a very important point. Like, listen, I remember years ago, the 80s, I used to listen to these self-development tapes, and it was these American ones. There weren't any British ones at the time. And it was a case of just listen to my emotion, you know, listen. And it's true. Just, you know, you got to engage with them also, and their emotions. And then once you start understanding that, then they might calm right down as well, in my opinion. That's how you deal with me anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, anyone who's arrived at your serviced accommodation, so I always like to have an immediate feedback. So some kind of login where they give you some kind of feedback on their first impressions. And generally, you know, let's say score of 1 to 5, 5 being good, 1 being terrible. You know, there'd be the odd occasion where you'd get a 1, 2, or a 3. So I would immediately call up and say, hi, you know, yeah, great to see that you've arrived at the property. I understand that you've just given me a 2-star rating for your first impressions. You know, what can I do to improve that experience for you? And most of the time they would say something like, oh, did I? I didn't even look. I just pressed something. Or they would say, I'm so sorry. I just had a 4-hour drive. I was just completely overwhelmed. I've sat down. I've had a cup of tea now. I've had a look around. The apartment's really lovely. I'm really happy. Or you might have the odd one where my cleaners had left a big pile of towels and forgot to pick them up. You know, these things happen. So, of course, I was immediately able to say, I'm so sorry. We'll go and sort that out now. But again, you're absolutely right. It's kind of listening into those those emotions and understanding where it is. I do have a question now. So you touched on it earlier, talking about sort of insurance cases. Do you consider that to be part of the corporate, you know, the corporate market? Where do you see them being sat?
Yeah, a bit of a sub market of corporate. It's hard. It's almost a market in itself, actually, isn't it? There will be agencies that will be contacting you. It'll almost always be an agency that contacts regarding that, or certainly if it's the actual guest themselves, then an agency will ultimately be handling the insurance side of things, the payment side of things. But yeah, so it's almost a tiny sub-market of corporate, in that it will involve often an agency. But yeah, good question. It's a funny one, that. Yeah, as opposed to refurbs and what have you, which can be quite similar, but they will often be contacting you directly, I think, the refurbishment people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit the same. I see the insurance. I think that, you know, there's a certain amount that you can attempt to do yourself, but a lot of them do come through those bigger, you know, the big corporate online travel agents. And obviously, generally, an insurance company is usually like a really big insurance company. So again, they don't want to be dealing with individual providers. They just want one person where they can say, we've got, you know, Jane, Tom and Max, 3 different properties, 3 different needs, you know, some have dogs, some don't, and then that agency sorts that out for them. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but a great one as well. I think insurance is a lovely one to have. So you also mentioned, Richard, that you do consultancy as well. So what does that look like?
It would, thank you. It would help to steer people, operators, new operators in the sector, or operators within the sector looking to move into the corporate marketplace. It would help them an awful lot to understand the sector, what we would, as the market, where we would start would really be that course, the 3 hours, £300, which would give an overview. We do also an onboarding service where we introduce operators to the service department booking agencies, of which there are many, and many big ones as well. And beyond that, we can offer I hate the word mentor, but we can offer a service where I will be there to guide clients if and when needed, because you can start with a template of how to approach a certain challenge, let's say, but a challenge is a challenge, and it will often be the case that people then need to check back and go, right, that's happened. How do I address that? Or, you know, how do we engage with this guest or this you know, agency or what have you? So generally speaking, it would be, the course would be something that we would start with, and it is a self-contained course. It's not just an introduction to my services, which then with a planned sell on. So there's the course, then there's the onboarding service. So 6 hours is £450. We can do a lot though in those 6 hours. 6 hours spread over 1 month. And you know, it's that kind of just a general reassurance that there's somebody there to check into that's been in the sector for so awfully long.
I love that. Well, so yeah, anyone, I've put a few links in there, but obviously we're on social media, so anyone can DM you if they want to. Sort of just a final quick one. I know we're nearly coming up to time now. So corporate bookings. So we've obviously touched a lot on agents, and absolutely that's the way to go. And I did just want to just to clarify that there's a big difference between a travel agent like booking.com and a corporate agent like Situ, Silverdor. Booking.com, you hear all the time that you're trying to convert those bookings to direct bookings. So you want to give them a call, and then you'll say, why don't you book with me next time, and I'll give you a cheaper deal. I just want to, and I'm sure you would agree with me here, Richard, with a corporate online travel agent, you must never do that. You would literally be cutting off your nose to spite your face to try and go direct. It would be just an absolute no to ever do that. So so I think it's really important to understand that if you get a booking, they come in, no matter how long it is, you would never want to miss out that agent, because their potential to bring you much bigger bookings is much bigger than you're ever going to be able to do potentially on your own. But having said that, there is obviously an opportunity to potentially get some direct bookings from, you know, maybe your local head offices. There might be, you know, companies that are growing that haven't gone and used agents, so to speak. So have you got any sort of advice for people who might be, you know, wanting to try and do that as well? Or do you have an advice on, you know, the difference between those sort of agency bookings and potentially direct ones?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I totally echo what you've just said. So the classic OTAs, online travel agents, Booking.com, Expedia, Airbnb, Vrbo, they're online predominantly, and they are what they are, and you don't really get too involved in people. The booking agents are often not online, and it comes back to that relationship thing again, and you're developing relationships. There is this kind of hashtag book direct thing. And okay, like I said at the beginning, everyone likes a direct booking because you don't pay commission. But booking agents, and not the OTAs, but the booking agents, put a lot of people on the road to work for you. You don't have the funds, presumably, to put a sales manager on the road, generally speaking, let alone one that's specific to agency business. There are brands out there which have sales managers and directors of all shapes and sizes. Some of them have sales managers and directors specifically targeting agencies. It's that big. Agency business is that big. So when you move into the corporate marketplace, you will be getting some direct bookings at a certain level. There's no doubt about that. The larger corporations, you simply won't, because they have a process which doesn't involve booking direct and blocks booking direct. So I've forgotten my train of thought, actually. You won't want in the corporate marketplace, the guest is the guest, but the client is actually the agency. They are the people that you want to develop that relationship with. The guest is simply somebody that's staying in your place, but the client is that agency who's given you access and spent a lot of time and money getting those corporates to your accommodation. So like you say, Emma, and I'll be blunt with it, don't disrespect that relationship, or you won't get it again. We ran a poll over COVID, and there were about 50 people online at the time, I think. And the results of that particular question were twofold. Number one, it's ethically incorrect to try to cut that note in the nose to spite your face, as you put it there, correctly. And number two, even if it's disregarding ethics, you won't get the business again. So, and even if that client extends, let the agency know. That's it. I'm actually having an eye on the time there.
Just a final one. So as far as directly going to corporates, I think it's really key. It's not like you're just going to deliver a leaflet like you might at a site, a development site, or you might take a photo of a van in a hotel like you would for a contractor. This is, or you might start posting into local Facebook groups where the people that live in that town tend to go to your destination for leisure. With corporate, you've got to be really, really professional. We're talking glossy brochures. This is and really understanding. So it's a bit like the sales process that I used to go through with L'Oreal, and any sales process. You want to find out what are their needs, and in your lovely glossy brochure you want to be answering those needs. So that's where going to events such as the SABA event will enable you to get all of that information up front, so you're not kind of wasting your time and effort in building that. So I think for me it's just really key to be very, very professional, and it is totally different. And that's where again we sort of go all the way back around again to ensuring that it is being a niche product. You are offering all of these things. That's nice. So we've had a few people thanking us. Teresa's just said really helpful. Darren also said that as well. So we've had quite a few people looking through, even though we were a bit late starting, but that's brilliant as well. Well, look, Richard, really great. Do you have a sort of a closing comment? Any kind of advice for people?
So I'll mix this in with some of the trends that were anticipated for next year. I would say first and foremost, and this is based on my own kind of experience of staying recently with a fairly large brand, to say, be confident about what you're offering, because it might be just as good as the larger brands in the marketplace. So figure out who you are, what you represent, and to whom you are targeting. Develop a niche, be confident about what you're doing, offer, obviously, clearly a good product, and very importantly, a good service. Be aware of some of the changes that will be taking place. I need to give credit here to Service Department News, a great, and Service Department. They run Service Department Awards, in which we're involved. But and a great event. Great people. Service Department News did a webinar not so long ago. Instagram, apparently, from Gen Z, 85% of purchasing decisions are made based on what people see on Instagram. I've got an Instagram account, never look at it, so there you go. I'm a million miles from Gen Z, clearly. Sustainable is very important. Always be constantly now thinking sustainable. So that will hook in to what the government needs the corporations to do. The corporations will want it knocks on down the line until we're one massive big green wash. But be aware of sustainables and that whole eco thing that's being pushed, and it won't go away, fortunately.
Yeah.
Lifestyle, it's moving away from boutique kind of brands to lifestyle brands. In other words, if you can offer a yoga corner in your accommodation, maybe that's the sort of thing now that's needed. It's health, well-being, those kind of things will be coming into what people are offering a lot more. And I think I won't waffle now, because we are looking at the time, aren't we? I don't mind, but I think we're probably on a clock.
No, that's brilliant. Well, look, and yeah, Scott said thank you so much as well. Yeah, thank you, Richard. Really appreciate that. I think it's I know we just sort of touched on the surface. Yeah. Please, guys, if you want to find out more, jump on those links, go and attend these events, because they really are very different to what you're used to. So it's really important. And Richard has put into place a course to ensure that you're not walking in and looking foolish, wasting people's times, knowing who's in the room. So it is it's an investment in knowing and being able to get business. And obviously we're not talking about two nights here, 4 nights there. Generally, these corporate bookings tend to be much bigger, much longer. Quite often, multiple people, they can have some absolute stonkers. So, these things are really worth investing time and effort into it. So, yes, again, thank you so much, Richard. Really take care.
No, it's my pleasure. And may I just say before we leave, because you won't promote it yourself, but it's so important to also look into the buying the Emma's book, because you'll have all valuable information there in one place. So I know that wasn't planned, and I wouldn't.
I got to get it launched yet.
well, when it is launched, but when so I will I will say that if Emma.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And then somebody has asked about where the links. We'll put the links in as well. They should be further up the line, but if they're not, we will go back through and just put the links in every one of the lives that we're on here. So brilliant. Thank you again, Richard. Take care. And we'll see you very, very soon.
Thanks, Emma.